Good evening. I am Chris Jarvis. I make indie games on the side. And with me, as ever, I'm joined by Ubisoft concept artist Vin Hill at our Montreal studio. Good evening, Vin.
Good evening, Chris.
On tonight's episode of the Polygon Forest podcast. The Epic Trial. Epic Games and Apple are at trial over alleged antitrust practices by the iPhone maker that could see the entire App Store ecosystem change and bring Fortnight back onto iPhones. The trial, which started last week, will address the questions: do Apple's in-app purchases policies violate antitrust law? Epic offered an in-app purchase on the App Store and didn't pay the 30% fee charged by Apple, effectively circumventing Apple's policy. Apple removed Epic from the App Store, and Epic responded immediately with the lawsuit, suggesting that a court case was Epic's strategy all along. The verdict could also have a far-reaching impact on other digital storefronts like the Xbox Live, PlayStation Store, and the Nintendo eShop. However, Judge Rogers, who is in charge of the US trial, seems cautious of this and is relying on Epic to be able to explain why the App Store is specifically a problem. Trials in Europe, the UK, and Australia are due to take place, potentially dragging this out for some time. The talking points on tonight's episode for the Epic court case will be developers using the Epic engine for iOS games and the future thereof. Xbox confirms they are making a loss from their console sales. Sony charges for cross-platform play. And Apple think 30% won't last forever. We could have talked about this for some time, but those are the things that I've decided we're going to talk about tonight, Vin. If you want to talk about anything else, that's fine.
Excellent.
Vin, we're over to you now for what is going to be discussed first of all in this podcast episode this evening.
Thank you, Chris. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Nintendo announcement, which just came this week, which is some very, very exciting news.
Indeed, Vin. What is that news?
So the news is that Nintendo this week announced a new game creation tool, which is also has sort of a child-friendly ecosystem around their new sort of plan to introduce game programming and games development into child's lives, which is really, really exciting for developers and also really exciting for gamers that are coming up and really interested in games development itself. So much in line with the Super Mario Maker and Nintendo Labo project, which they had, Nintendo are also taking another step in encouraging their younger audiences to explore games programming, which is very, very cool. So it's basically a node-based system in the actual game itself, where instead of programming out lines of code, you can take nodes and connect them together, and it basically translates into game mechanics within the engine, which is really, really exciting. So
have we seen anything yet? I've only seen some screenshots. Have we seen gameplay?
There's a short trailer, which came along with the announcement, which showed off the node-based systems. But in the game itself, well, they call it a game. It's basically an engine. In the engine itself, you can make background music, you can make sprites, you can make animations, all that sort of stuff. And you can also code it all together. And there's some really interesting like asteroids-based sort of platformery games, and there's a couple of like first-person games that people have made, and Nintendo have made all of their own little projects as well.
Yeah.
Very, very much in the same line as what Sony did last year with Dreams. I don't know if you've got a chance to play this.
I saw Dreams, and I've seen a lot of what people have made, but I haven't had a chance to dive into it yet. I think I've missed the boat. I think most of the Epic stuff has already been made, and I can't possibly think of anything to add to that.
Yeah, just a brilliant little engine. Like, such a great idea. Like, I'm really liking this direction that developers are sort of going in with this aspect of games development, because like I've had this problem with the education system in the Western countries for years, where they're not sort of adapting to this new climate. They're not teaching kids how to program full time. Like I have been pretty adamant about this whole kids should be learning how to program from an early age.
Hmm.
We use devices all day. We use phones. Everyone's got an iPad. Everyone sits on computers all day. Everyone's using all this stuff, but no one knows how to code.
Yeah.
Which is insane if you think about it. Like, it's like you're using a language that you don't know how to. It's like being illiterate, in my opinion. Like we're using a tool that we don't really know the language to, and now games companies are starting to like wake up to that fact, and they're sort of thinking, how can we like circumvent this and get around this whole idea of teaching kids how to learn code, which I think this is another step towards that, and it's great.
I think that, it looks like it's the natural successor to the Mario Maker, where that just got a whole generation captivated into being able to have control a bit more into the video games that they play, because they're literally making the video games that they play at the end of the day, the levels at very least. So I saw that there was like a handful of different game modes, which is interesting. So it looks like they're going, these are the core game modes, this is what you can be making. And then it's click and drag, drop and drag. There's a mouse compatibility as well.
Yeah, there's you can plug in a mouse into your Switch, which is kind of amazing. Like that,
wow.
Even I don't think that's been done, and if it has, then I've not heard about it, I guess. But yeah, that'll definitely remove one of the barriers to the game instead of just using the touch controls or using controllers. That'll be a definite help, because if you could use a mouse in something like Dreams, I think that the difference would be night and day. Because I remember at some point with Dreams on the PlayStation 4, they introduced the Move controllers.
Right.
And when that came in, the whole community sort of exploded, and everyone started using these sculpting features that are in the engine. So
yes, I've seen a lot of that.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
That came out of nowhere, but yeah.
No, it came out your nose, Vin.
Basically, it did. Correct.
They wouldn't be on any news channel, would it? But yeah, I'm really excited for this. My 5-year-old today was using my mouse to play on some like BBC iPlayer games.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, if we had like a Nintendo Switch here on like a little stand, and he had a mouse plugged into it, he could be making his own games. If it's as easy. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how young you can be to make something that's, you and me would say,
with the UI that they've got set up with the nodes system, which is there are other engines out there, like professional engines. I think Unreal uses node-based systems as well. I think it can, at least, but we've played with it internally at Ubisoft as well, and just had like nodes set up instead of like lines of code. Like you can have designers come in and use it without being a programmer, so you can set up like really simple functions. Yeah. It's not obviously 100% like that, but it's a good introduction, especially to kids. There are educational programs out there for kids in schools that are using these node-based systems, but having that Nintendo skin about it, will definitely help, especially if they can introduce like, you can make your own Mario game and stuff like this.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's going to turn kids onto games that might not have even conceived this. I mean, we're coming at it looking from a video game world perspective, but a lot of kids are just consumers. Well, most of them are. I can't see anyone that's like in the industry. Yeah. All of them. All kids at the minute are just consumers.
Yeah, to me, that's a good assumption to make.
We can assume that much. And then they might be turned on to this just because of the fact that it's off the back of Mario. If they can make and Mario Maker, they might be going, I want to do this. I love Mario Maker because of Mario, and now I want to do this. And they would never have conceived of anything similar to that before.
It's a nice natural progression from Mario Maker, I think, because Mario Maker is very much it's not really a game creation tool, but it's like a level design tool, right? So you get all the things like from the levels, and you can organize things the way that you want, and you have to get from A to B. And it's just you like making levels, and it's very specifically about that, which is great. Like, it's a good thing to introduce people to, but like it stops short at the programming side of stuff, which is probably the next general step towards making a game.
Yeah.
Which, like, level design, like, as an indie developer, like, level design is like almost towards the end of stuff that you do. Like, it's not like there's so much stuff before that which you don't even begin. Like, that's way more important and way more like back endy stuff. So this introduced kids to that, which is great.
Yeah, it starts with that. So something like this, just a level builder, is just the end stage. I mean,
Right.
but for some people, that's just 100% of their job. Depends what they go into, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a good sort of option to give to more kids to say, okay, not only could you do level design, you could do programming, or you could be an artist, or you can be an animator now, and all these different things like Nintendo Labo and Super Mario Maker, and now this, which is called what is it? Game Builder Garage. It's called. It's going to be out on June 11th. It's going to be about $30, so I can imagine it's about £20 in the UK.
Okay.
So pretty cheap as well. Like, I'm glad Nintendo didn't like stick a full price tag on this, you know, because it's important. You know, it would have been even better if it was like free or something. But obviously, like this stuff costs money to make, so I totally get they have to make some return on it.
Yes,
but
yes.
Yeah, it's great. I love this stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this like 20 years down the line, where they're like, yeah, I love this Nintendo Game Builder Garage, and that got me into video games, and now I'm like this amazing prodigy of game design. So
exactly. So like in 20 years time, when we're interviewing people and say, oh, what decided you to get into games? Like, why did you want to get into this? And they're going to recall these stories. Like, oh, I remember when I was a kid and my dad got me.
I was watching the Polygon
Game
Forest
Builder
podcast.
Garage. Oh no, right. Wow, you watch that too? So does everyone else. Like,
it's like Bill and Ted, where like in the future they're world famous musicians.
Right, that's going to happen.
We're like world famous podcasters, but we just don't know it yet.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine? But that's basically the whole story. I just think this is a good little story, which I wanted to sort of bring up because, the more we can push towards education systems, introducing their stuff, like it's good that more and more companies are doing this, and it helps. Like even at Ubisoft, we've got I think it was like a Rabbids game that we did, which was like code based stuff. I think that's. It's either out or it's been announced or something like it, and that's been going on for a while. PlayStation have obviously got their initiative with Dreams, and there's a lot of other little gamey sort of engine stuff that you can play around with. So like more the merrier. I love this stuff because it's only you're just planting seeds for the future, and I think that's super important. And
the future is going to be a lot more node based stuff for sure. Like
I think so too.
Yeah, it's going to be there. I mean, you'll never not need coding, but but what's coming out, especially if you look at Unity, what we use primarily, since when we last when we was at uni, I couldn't use it really. It was just beyond me. And now it's at a place where I can use it because of its usability and drop and drag and etc. So yes,
for sure.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, very much.
So shall we go on to the Epic trial?
We should.
We
Why
should.
not?
So the first point to talk about regarding the Epic Apple trial, which in itself conjures up images of apples looking badass in my brain in any case. So developers that are using the Epic engine, they're probably like, indie developers, they'll be like, yep, I've always used Epic engine. That's what I know. That's what I like. I want to be releasing games on all the platforms. And, iOS is one of the platforms. With this trial and the potential consequences thereof, we could see a whole host of developers that are just not able to release their game on the iOS store because of simply the fact that they're using the Epic engine, whereas the engine has got nothing to do with the court case, really, I can tell.
Right.
There's some interesting things about the court case that have come out that doesn't seem to be anything to do with Epic or Apple or, that they're loosely related to video games. But what are your thoughts on this? Is this just a potential casualty of this court case with two giant, massive multi-million-dollar corporations fighting it out?
I hear the concern, and I've seen a lot of other people mention this as well, and I totally understandable. Like Apple and Epic are going at each other's throats right now, and it's obviously going to make them very angry at each other at some point. So anything that's Apple related on anything to do with Unreal is going to be scrutinized a bit further than normally would, and vice versa. And I'm sure Apple's going to be looking at all of the Unreal stuff on their store and be thinking, do we really want to support these guys? And while all of that is understandable, I don't think Apple would be stupid enough to affect developers that just happen to have used the Unreal Engine because it happens to belong to Epic. There's a lot of platforms and services which Epic supply, like even this week, which we weren't covering in this, but Epic just announced that they have just bought out ArtStation,
Ah.
which, for all the people that don't know what ArtStation is, it's a huge sort of portfolio-based website for artists in the games industry and the movie industry, predominantly used by 3D artists and 2D artists trying to get into industry and studio jobs. It's probably the most widely used. It's basically DeviantArt, but a lot more focused on the professional mindset of that's where art directors go to really look up stuff. And now ArtStation has been bought out by Epic. Does that mean that the ArtStation app is going to be removed by Apple? Stuff like that. And it's a similar thing with the engine. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's going to happen based on precedents that have already been set by Apple and their competitors that have had lawsuits with them and they've had problems with, but they've been able to look past certain things. I think direct games that are published by Epic, absolutely, I think they could be casualties. But the any games that just happen to use our engine, it might be a bit more of a stretch for that to happen, because it's the equivalent of someone writing code on a Microsoft machine and then publishing it on the iOS store. Like, it's the same sort of thing. Like, it's an engine. Like, you've used something else other than a Apple product to create your thing, and they really don't like Microsoft, and Microsoft really don't like them, but they still do a little bit of business together, even though, you know, they're direct competitors and have way more beef than what Apple does with Epic. So it's, considering like Microsoft is still able to do things on the iOS platform, it brings me hope that this shouldn't be affected too much, I would hope. But I don't know, it remains to be seen. Like, what do you think about it?
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if just because of, regardless of whatever their intent is, I wouldn't be surprised if they just say we're not supporting Epic, full stop. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's no more support for the future games that are out, no more updates allowed, and no more releases allowed that use the Epic engine. Like, just as like, could be just illegal. We're not doing any business with Epic, and that just falls under the umbrella of Epic. And where they draw the line might be red tape. It might not be anything to do with them. So it might be one of those legal things where they just say, we don't want to deal with this, but that means we have to get rid of all this. And unfortunately, that's just a casualty of war. I won't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like when it comes to like the legality of that, I mean, I know there's obviously legal, they're their own company and they're legally allowed to just remove stuff for whatever reason that they want. But I think there would probably be some sort of internal repercussions if they just removed Epic because, quote unquote, they don't like them. You know, that someone would have to happen within the engine that would break their terms and conditions. So it'd have to be in the terms and conditions that not allowed game engines under the name of Unreal or something. Like, even if it was that stupid, like they would have to update that. But at the moment, like, nothing that I could see would really, you know, disrupt their terms and conditions in any way. So I'm not really too sure if there was any reason for them to just cut it out just for the pure fact that they, quote unquote, don't like them. So it's, I mean, it could go either way though. Like, you're absolutely right. They are allowed to just like writ large cut out the Unreal Engine from everything, but it would affect so many developers. I think that there might be backlash, not just from Unreal, but you're talking about a lot of other big studios. Like, you know, like people, there's a lot of companies out there that just use Epic's engine that I've got nothing to do with this, and they were just quite happily using a game engine, and it might have been a game that came out 10 years ago, and now it's suddenly getting taken down, and all their revenue's getting removed. It's sort of like, where's the fair line? I think Apple will probably balance that a little bit as well. At least I hope it would, you know. But yeah, it remains to be seen.
I hope so. But you know, yes, the one side of the coin is that Apple are just like everyone else, and everyone else, there's lots of platforms that take 30%. And then the other side of the coin is, but they also charge like $100 a year, which is in the later point. So that, it could go either way. We have to wait and see what the court case is due to end soon.
It depends how much bloodshed is done during this trial, because this trial is going to go on for weeks. Like, we've just gotten through the first week of it. This is going to go on for like another few weeks at least.
Do you
So
reckon?
by the end, yeah, I think so. They've got about 45 hours each of arguments or something. So
Oh, right. Okay.
I think they've both got through like 8 so far. So
Right.
yeah, it's going to go on for a while. It's going to be going on for a bit.
I read at some places that it's due to end soon, but then I guess soon is. I don't know what they mean. Like, do they mean soon in terms of massive corporate things that could go on for years? Do they mean soon in terms of a regular court case, which is I don't know how long, or do they mean video game? I think
the lesson here is like you shouldn't listen to like 2 random podcasters.
Don't listen to the press.
Right. Yeah.
Or us.
Just go and read like about the trial, but we're just giving our top line opinions on like what the key points are, the key takeaways at least. But go check out the trial yourself.
Check it out. One of the reasons why we wanted to do this podcast, though, it's probably worth mentioning, is that it was a bit overwhelming, the amount of information that we're getting. And the articles, there's a lot of them. And so one of the things we wanted to do was just have a conversation about some points to at least have some clarity. So if you're interested in the trial, but you haven't had any time to like dive in, this is just so you can just sit there and listen or watch with your eyes and listen to us debate some of the finer points of the trial.
Indeed.
And some of it's really boring. For example, some of the boring stuff is like, video game studios review games.
Shocking. Who would have thought?
Enough about that. Can't talk about that. There's nothing to say. There's literally nothing we can say about that. It's not surprising. I'm not surprised.
Every publisher does it. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Like everyone's shocked about that thing, and it's like no. Like,
so you won't get any in-depth
totally
analysis on that view or that revelation, because it's just like okay.
Quote, unquote. Yeah.
Which brings us on to a more interesting topic that we can talk about and have interesting points of view on, which is Xbox confirms that they make a loss from their console sales. Xbox Vice President Lori Wright was called Lori Wright was called in as a third-party witness for the trial, where she was asked questions about the console market. In response to a question from Epic lawyer Wes Ehrenhardt asking how much margin Microsoft earns on the sale of Xbox consoles, Wright said, "We don't. We sell the consoles at a loss." Asked if Microsoft has ever earned a profit on the sale of an Xbox console, Wright replied, "No." This is groundbreaking because it's at a trial and she's under oath and she's talking about the business.
Yeah, she can't lie.
She can't lie. Anything else that might have been said in the press or talked about at press conferences could be posturing towards other console manufacturers. Like we don't make a profit. That could be used as like ammunition so that other consoles might make decisions. It could be used as a tactic. It might be an absolute fabrication. But up until this point now, we now know that is the case.
Yeah, it's very much like it's kind of like a political football, pretty much, and they just like pass this thing around, like, and they can use it in various different ways, like you just said. Like they can use it in a very like consumer friendly type of way, right? They can say, "Oh, we don't make any profits on our console. We just make them out of the goodness of our hearts. We can give them to you, and then you can buy our products like software wise." And that's it. That's all we like to do. And then there's other companies that will turn around and say, "Oh my God, look at our console sales. We're killing it. We're doing so well and stuff." So it's this really interesting revelation that's come out now, which is now official. Like I think it was suspected for a long time that a lot of consoles are sold at a loss, but now that it's official, it's sort of like, okay, what does that mean? Yes. So that's the thing about it. But,
so now we know that kind of blows out of the water the PS5 is winning news,
right?
Because they've sold so many consoles. Because we now know that for every console they're selling, they're making a loss. Yeah. I mean, yes, they're paying 70 quid at least for one game, but how often PlayStation users buy games at that price is yet to be seen. Whereas the subscription model could be far more profitable from Xbox.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense why Xbox are going after the subscription model, considering that they've never made profit on any console ever. And that includes all of the previous consoles as well, which is bananas if you think about it. But at the same time, like if you think about the average sort of core gamer and how many games they buy per generation, like it's such a small amount for the actual console, like the buy-in. So this kind of makes sense to that respect, you know, and it makes you, the thing that like, as soon as this came out, I was like, okay, it'll be interesting to see if PlayStation are in the same boat. Have they ever made any profit on any of their consoles?
I doubt it. Because PlayStation 4 was like $200 for a long, long time?
Yeah.
Or they reduced it, and it was
it came out with $399, so $400, and then it came down to $3, I think. And I think it was at $299 for
$299, that was it, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was it.
For a long time. And so that makes it all very interesting.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make much sense for the console wars, as it were, to focus on price now.
Right, but at the same time, like, this is the strange sort of dynamic of this, right, though? But where they say, yeah, we've sold 10 million consoles, for example, right? Or like by the end of a generation, they say, oh, we've sold 100 million console, and that's like the sort of golden number which console manufacturers sort of go for. And they say, okay, we've sold 100 million consoles. What does that mean? That means that 100 million people are buying our software from us, which is a valid point, like, especially if you're making so much money on that software. So that's when the hardware sales, actually come into play, where we've sold 100 million units of our console, therefore like 100 million people are buying our software constantly from us, which is a valid number to look at because that's actually profit at that point. So yeah, it doesn't make much sense to talk about the hardware, but at the same time it does, because that also like
has a knock-on effect to the software.
Yeah,
because we know that because of just the sheer number of PS5 consoles that are out there, a lot of people are buying PS5 games at least one.
Yeah,
we know at least one of they've all got at least one game.
Exactly. Well, they've got it. Like they haven't really got that much choice at this point.
They haven't got that much choice, which is interesting. One interesting thing that we don't know, which could be very relevant, is how much of a loss. Is it 1p per console?
I think they try and get as close as they can to zero, and I think we see, because what ends up happening, like even now, it was in the news this week that Sony are already redesigning the internals of the PlayStation 5 this early on, and the reason for that is because cheaper parts come in that are different sizes.
Yeah.
Different manufacturers take over certain parts, and then they've got to redesign them to sort of fit with their systems. And it happens a lot where like internal revisions of the hardware comes around, and that brings down the costs to the point that they might like not actually make that much extra on them, because like as they drop the price of the consoles, they also have to make the internals cheaper to make. And I think it's just them trying to get back to that baseline of zero. But yeah, you're right. Like it does bring into question how much of a loss they're taking, which I don't think they'll ever announce how much of a loss they're taking.
Even if they're in court, they'll go, no, I'm just not going to tell you.
Right.
Or how much of a profit they make on the software.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if the Xbox Series X is at a loss, then is the Xbox Series X at more of a loss than the Xbox Series S?
There must be a business model for it. There must be a business model for it.
But at the end of the day, like you've got to take a step back from that and look at, okay, there's less than 10 million Xbox Series consoles out in the wild right now with end users, but they're coming up to 30 million Game Pass users.
Yeah.
So if they've got that many subscribers, like where does it take over? Because like if you're subscribed to Game Pass for a year, then that's like you're getting a good chunk of money out of all these people. And if that Game Pass just keeps going up and up and up, then when do hardware sales actually not matter? Yeah. I would argue that they didn't matter about 15 years ago. Like it's this, like we're getting to that point now where it's just we need to start looking at software rather than hardware a lot of the time, because even with the generations of Nintendo users, I remember when there was a lot of discussion about how well the Nintendo DS was doing, or the 3DS. And people were saying, oh my God, look at the hardware numbers for the 3DS. And I remember having a conversation with someone about it and thinking, like I don't know a hardcore like Nintendo fan out there that doesn't own multiple 3DSs, like from different regions or different styles, different colors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like you see Nintendo fans all the time.
Yeah.
With like 5 different 3DSs, like, oh, this is my favorite one because it's purple, and this one's, and stuff.
And this one's see-through, and I modded this one and I didn't mod this one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, like, where does the line be drawn for like hardware sales? Like, why why should we matter about this to an extent?
And Nintendo could be the odd one out as well, because I know that they have been known to be saying that they made their they made the Switch to be as profitable as quickly as possible, which was
the Switch. Sorry.
Yeah. Did you brain fart there and forget the word Switch?
No, the Switch. Like you switched over. Bad joke.
Oh.
Continue.
Oh dear.
I'm here all week.
Yeah. No. What my point was? Yes, Nintendo have been known to be say that they want to make their console as profitable as soon on as possible, which would
right.
I'm paraphrasing, and that's not even English. Which would suggest that as soon as you've bought one or two games, then they've made their money back.
They made their money back.
Yeah,
and you've got to expect like the rest of the console manufacturers are the same, if not just add one more game onto that. Which like if I'm anything to go by, the PlayStation 4 last generation, I probably bought maybe 150 games, maybe 200, easy. Like I was just constantly buying things on sale.
That's a lot of money, isn't it?
It's a lot of money. I'm talking about $2,000 over about 7 years.
Yeah, which
sounds like a lot of money, but like week by week or whatever, like it's not that much for like the amount of entertainment I get out of that. It's not. It's really quite low.
Well, pound for pound, it's still the cheapest form of entertainment if you compare it to like the theatre, the cinema, like pounds, like entertainment
for the time you get out of it.
Entertainment per hour. Yeah, right. It's like the cheapest. It's like the cheapest media. Magazine sales, reading a book. Actually, no, maybe not reading a book. Reading a book might be cheaper. Depends.
Maybe it depends how fast you are,
and it depends how long you play the game. Once you've read a book,
my wife can blast through a book in probably a day, like no problem. She'll just page after page after page. I'm like, I just look at her, I'm like, how the fuck are you through this book? It's crazy fast. But yeah, she's laughing at me now because she knows, like she's so proud of herself over there. But it takes me ages to get through a book, like normally, because I read like every single word. I'm like, maybe she just skims through pages.
She just goes through like first word of each paragraph.
I think that's it. Yep. I think she
gets the gist.
Right. But yeah, it could be the same with video games though, like, so it's definitely an interesting take where like when do hardware sales losses like sort of circumvent, the software sales? Because I can imagine it's quite quick,
Yeah. What's that got to do with Epic versus Apple though?
Not too much.
Nothing.
Because you're right. It's because they're probably just trying to figure out like how much Epic are actually making on each like individual sort of storefront
console.
And they want to sort of compare and tackle it against that, which is probably a valid point. Like to be fair to Apple,
there's some graphs of the revenue I've seen
for sure, yeah.
And it's like PlayStation is just like whoosh, through the roof,
right, way at the top.
Yeah, and it was like at one point it was like PlayStation's most successful video game as well, which is just crazy.
It makes me think that the judge probably goes home and she's probably like a hardcore gamer or something. I don't know if it's a he or a she. I think is it a she? I'm not sure, but like whoever the judge is, because I haven't watched any of the trials.
I think it's a she.
Right. So I can imagine she's probably like a hardcore gamer, and she goes home and she like listens to all the podcasts and all that sort of stuff, and she knows all this sort of stuff. So she's just bringing in all these witnesses, so she just wants the inside scoop.
Yeah, and like all the documents are getting leaked. Oh, like the cat's out of the bag that we can't.
And she's like, no, we just need to figure this out for legal minds. And she's going home and she's like on Twitch with a headset and stuff. She's like, "What's up, guys?" And
like,
stuff.
What's up,
guys? She's one of those.
In the hot tub and Xbox. Make a loss on all the.
God, that would actually make it so much better. But yeah, like it wouldn't surprise me at the same time. But yeah, no, it totally makes sense. It's one of those things that everyone's had a suspicion about for years. The whole fact that they probably don't make much money off these consoles, and now that we know that they really don't make any money off them,
without the veil of marketing behind it, or could be lying, or.
I think the only company that are making any money anywhere, honestly, is probably Nintendo off their hardware sales, just purely because they, like, there's no secret about it. They make consoles that are extremely underpowered for the current generation, and they know how to ship hardware to the point that it's making them profit. So it works for them, and it's great, and the consumers like it. So it's all good and well. But they're probably making a killing off all the chips. So
because they're always like a generation behind, so they're never using the most powerful stuff. Yeah, so it's gonna be discounted.
And it works for them. It totally works.
Be interesting to see if they carry on that trend at E3. I hope not.
Indeed.
I hope
Hopefully.
not. Well, this is the thing. 4K, like 30 FPS, 4K, it's fine. Like we're getting to the point now where
I mean, it's debatable if it'll be 4K, quote unquote. I think it'll be upscaled 4K using the new NVIDIA Shield. But that's a whole different discussion.
That's a whole different thing. We've talked about that as well.
We'll get to that soon. Yeah.
So next thing, Sony charges for cross-platform play.
Evil people.
Evil Sony. Cross-platform play is not a slam dunk, no matter the size of the title. As you know, many companies are exploring this idea, and not a single one can explain how cross-console play improves the PlayStation business. That is taken from an email from Gio Corsi of PlayStation to Tim Sweeney of Epic. That was paraphrased and sliced together, but you get the idea. That's what Sony's opinion is on cross-play between different platforms. So it's bottom line for them, isn't it? It doesn't make them money.
It's business money.
To have games on other platforms. Yeah. And like, what gets me is like, no one can explain how crossplay consoles improves the PlayStation business. Why would the other companies want to explain that to PlayStation? Hey, PlayStation, this is going to make your business better, says competitor to PlayStation.
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you, mate, are they?
No, it's an interesting sort of aspect to this whole thing where, you know, like the sort of, what you call it, the consumer friendliness of PlayStation is starting to get stripped away a little bit because they're focusing on the numbers, which is rightfully so.
They're a business.
Like they're a business at the end of the day. They've got to make money. They're trying to survive. They're trying to make ends meet at the end of the day. They've got to pay their developers. They've got to pay all their producers and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, absolutely. I totally get why they do this. But at the same time, it's like there is some ironic moves being made by Sony to sort of get around this whole aspect, like the buyout. Like we weren't actually going to go into this that much, but
we can't talk about it now. Then you said we're not going to.
Right. So like the Discord news that came out this week from Sony are being extremely consumer friendly of, you know, saying, oh, we want to be inclusive of all platforms and bring all this in. But at the same time, they're sort of trying to push away crossplay as much as they can. So it's this sort of ironic, you know, juxtaposition of like these different viewpoints. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's money. You know,
it's weird because how does Discord make Sony money? They would have. There's obviously money changed hands. I'm sure Xbox would have wanted to get a slice of that Discord pie because Discord have like won, haven't they? So Discord, like they've won the community platform wars.
Yeah, it's the messenger. It's like the message system of choice for gamers at this point.
Yeah. And now it's going to be on PlayStation. So it's bringing those communities closer together. So there'll be PlayStation games community people that are on Discord and they can access that via their PlayStation. That flies in the face of what we've heard we've read on the email.
Yeah,
to Tim Sweeney from PlayStation. So their messaging is a bit. You're right. It's 100%. It's a bit juxtaposition, really. Yeah,
it's a bit backwards, I guess. But at the end of the day, like Discord doesn't make or lose them any money because it's just gamers talking to each other on different platforms or across different platforms. That they're sat in a Discord server and they're talking on chat while they're playing a game on their PlayStation 5, for example, and someone else in their Discord is playing on PC. And they're just having a conversation. That's no effect really to PlayStation because, you know, they're still in the PlayStation ecosystem. But having cross-play on a game might not gain them any money. It doesn't lose them any money, but it doesn't gain them any extra because there's no reason to go out and buy a PlayStation 5 if all of your friends can play the same game as you on Xbox Series X.
Yeah.
And, you know, like there's no reason for you to be sat there going, oh my God, all my friends have got a PlayStation 5. I need to get a PlayStation 5 in order to play with them. It removes that extra sale of that PlayStation 5 for Sony. So I can understand why they don't want this to be a thing. And I think everyone knows that. And I think Microsoft have been the ones that have really started pushing this because at the end of the day, Microsoft don't care what you play on. Like as we just discussed in the previous bit of like, they don't make any money on their hardware anyway. So it doesn't matter what system you play on. Like as long as you subscribe to Game Pass, they don't care. Because
they're not losing money from people being in Discord on the PlayStation Network and being able to use that cross-platform. Why did they charge Epic? Because they're not losing any money for people playing on other games. So why do they charge Epic money? They're the only people to charge for cross-platform play. Like Xbox are in the same boat, but Xbox didn't charge Sony. Xbox didn't charge Epic.
Yeah, there's a very simple and stupid answer to this, and that is because they can. And it's just that simple. Like if you look at the numbers for Fortnite and how much like people are playing it on the PlayStation platform, like you just said, I think it was something like 70% of all the players or something.
Yeah, it was crazy high numbers. Platform. So yeah, they were the only ones then, I suppose. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so hundreds of millions of players. Like if they're like, holy crap, like these people are taking a chunk out of us because of our server costs or whatever, like for however they justified it. Like if it costs too much of servers, like if people are just using the PlayStation Network to communicate through the PlayStation servers, like the actual chat systems and stuff like that.
70% more than any other platform.
Right. So they're probably losing a good chunk of money from that just purely through the server side of stuff. So I understand why they probably charge Epic a little bit more for that, which makes sense. Like if at the end of the day, if you're shipping more of this game, then pay higher taxes and all that sort of stuff. It goes back to the whole like meta politics of this, right? The whole like if you earn more, then you should be paying more at the top to be within this ecosystem or whatever.
Yeah. But on the flip side, though, there's like economy of scale, and it would cost PlayStation less money because they're earning more money from more people using it.
Yeah. But like I obviously I don't agree with this sort of mindset of like, oh, you're selling more games, therefore we should charge you more. Like I don't think that's really ethically fair to everyone else that's selling a lot of games as well, just because they're in the hundreds of millions versus the tens of millions. Yeah, like is GTA getting charged more to be on the PlayStation Store because that's constantly at the top.
Yeah,
that we don't know, but it'll be interesting to know.
Again, what's that got to do with Epic and Apple?
Right.
But this is the stuff that's coming out of the court case. Interesting stuff.
It's because they're setting up like this sort of case to say, like Epic don't actually make that much money on the Apple Store, so why the hell are they bringing all this up? Like that's the sort of mindset that they're going at with this, which I can see the angle that they're trying to attack this from. They're laying down a foundation for their argument. So when their argument is actually presented
of the landscape of the of the marketplace.
And then when they turn around and say, actually, like if Epic only make this amount of money in the Apple Store, then why the hell are they, why should they complain, sort of thing? Like they should be thankful for what they get, and who knows how it's going to turn out? But
who knows?
That's the brush that they're painting with.
It's interesting because only Epic are probably in the financial situation to take on Apple in this sort of arena and pay money.
I think that's why they're doing it. It's because they've taken so much money. Yeah, because
companies have said that Apple aren't fair. Like other companies have said it. Like there's been, was it Match have said that it's unfair. There've been other software developers that have said, Apple aren't fair. It's a monopoly. Yeah,
I mean, this is where the interesting conversation goes. Is like it's a monopoly within its own ecosystem. Is it? Like that's the question. Like a lot of people don't really know, and that's sort of what this court case is gonna. Bring it down to. Like, does Apple own a monopoly in the sort of app store? Like, if in terms of all the digital apps, like, do Apple own a monopoly? Technically, no, but they own a monopoly within their own ecosystem of the iPhone. Yeah, and because the iPhone is so popular now, is that a monopoly in and of itself? Because like 1 billion users are using iPhone products, like, and that is the question which is sort of trying to be answered during this court case. I don't really have an opinion on that either way. Like, I just don't know. Like because this is all new ground. This is what's so fascinating about this, is because this is all new technology. These are new marketplaces. We've never really seen anything like this happen. I mean, there's been bits of it, but now that we're like the Epic have decided to take the mantle on this and dive headfirst into this, and there's no
guarantee as to what's going to happen. It could go either way, and it could nothing can happen as well. You could just be like,
could be a stalemate.
Yeah. And no changes is made, and the marketplace.
Well, I think that's what Apple want more than anything. They just want everyone to go away and leave us alone. Please leave us alone. We're fine. But there's no secret about that with Epic and Unreal and all that sort of stuff. Though they purposefully tried to do this thing to circumvent the Apple sort of the payment system, so they could get around that within the App Store. The second that they took that down, the second that Apple said, "Okay, no, we're not having that. We're removing Fortnite from the store," second they did that, they got landed with the lawsuit. So they were ready for this. Like they did this on purpose and they were ready for it. And this was sort of they wanted to fight this fight. So like we'll see how it goes. But there's no secret. Like this wasn't planned.
And there was that email. There was the email to, was it the Xbox CEO? It was like, you'll enjoy the fireworks that are coming over this. So that there's been no secret, which is interesting. And I love all the fact we're getting all these private emails. It's so like,
it's great. Yeah,
it's makes so it like seeing someone's inbox and seeing like the font that they use, and it's just like, oh, this is so good.
Really, Comic Sans? It's 2021.
Wingdings.
Oh, dude, if I was the CEO of like Sony or Xbox or Epic or something, I would totally use Comic Sans just to piss people off, like all day, every day, just Comic Sans. Times New Roman in reply,
just change it up. Every font different.
Yeah.
It's like, what? I'm creative. What? Get over it. Especially if you thought what you're saying is going to appear like clipped and sent on world media for like a big massive court case as well.
Gold. I love it. Just make us look even more ridiculous.
And emojis. I'd add emojis as well.
Absolutely.
But this kind of actually does lead me on to, well, not this, but what we were talking about leads me on to the last point, which is Apple think 30% won't last forever. So I think it's as a response to this whole thing. But prior to Apple's small business program that cut its rates to 15% for developers making less than $1 million in revenue, Phil Schiller wondered whether Apple should make the proactive decision to cut fees. This is taken from an email to Steve Jobs. While I am a staunch supporter of the 70-30 split, I don't think that 70-30 will last that unchanged forever. Apple still charges so that was the quote.
Yeah.
Apple still charges $99 a year to publish games on the App Store. So if you're a small developer, now you only have to pay 15% of your profit to Apple. So that's great news.
Yeah.
But if you're a really small developer, you have to still pay £99 a year to have the games on the store. That, I think, sucks.
Right. I mean, I've published a game on the Apple Store before.
Mm-hmm.
Also had to pay the $99.
Mm-hmm.
Been through this. And it's very hit and miss. Like when you have discussions about people, like you just said, like the first baseline reaction is like, oh my God, you're charging people money just to like get the game on there. But there are sometimes benefits to having a paywall to this sort of stuff because it stops egregious practices as well.
That's Apple's argument, is that the fact that they charge this much fee means that they can have the most secure network, and it creates the quality of content is like, it's a bit of a firewall for quality as well.
Yeah, I mean, that explanation is probably a bit, there's a lot of fluff in that, and there's a lot of BS.
They're multi-million pound corporation. They can make sure it's secure.
They don't need the cash. Like the charging of the money is not important to them. They're not trying to make a quick buck out of anyone, although I'm sure they welcome the extra $100 a year. Don't get me wrong, from random developers, but at the same time, like it does just unfortunately keep people out, like with a paywall. Like it stops like people just completely flooding the system with just crap, basically, and just like submitting things which are officially like let through by Apple for whatever reason, but it stops people publishing 50 app versions of the same thing, especially if it costs that much per time to actually publish it, or like to actually become a developer, so you're not just like getting kicked out and going back in over and over and over again. So it has its cons and pros. Like I think $100 is too much. Absolutely. It should be like 15 or something, like that would be fine.
Yeah.
It is a lot of money for like a random developer, especially a kid that's just getting started and like, hey, thought of this app. I don't even get pocket money, like I don't even have an allowance to get $100. Like this is like, there's a lot of money to a kid like that's just getting started, and they might have this amazing multi-billion-dollar worth idea that they can't actually get out there to publish. So that sucks. Absolutely. Yeah. But I think removing the paywall altogether is also a bad idea. So they do need to find this middle ground somewhere, I think. But what that is
but if it's a game and you want to be an indie developer and you just want to start on the side, you want to start small, it's preventing you from starting small. You have to make a loss or don't do it. Yeah. Or you have a hit. So there's the options. You either pay the money, it's $100 a year, and you have a hit and it makes more than $100. So a hit is more than $100 a year. But you get what I mean.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Or you make a loss and it makes less than $100 a year. So you're making a loss. So you're paying to have the app on there.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people that would just be, for me, I'm making a game at the moment. And I'm looking at the different platforms.
Mm-hmm.
This is the reason why this $100 a year, I think, is the reason why all the YouTube videos I see about what you're going to be producing on, it's like Steam first, then itch.io. And then if it does really well, then you can start looking at Apple because you know it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. And
that's afterwards. And because there's more hoops to jump through with development as well as payment for releasing on Apple. So that it's no surprise that it's always Apple last. And that's a real shame because people are missing out really on some gems that maybe didn't do too well financially, but are still great games. And also, this doesn't stop a load of crap from getting through on the app system, because there's a lot of crap on the iOS store, like a lot of crap.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's not stopping those games from getting through, is it?
Right.
But I suppose Apple is still making money, so they don't really care.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's one of those things like, yeah, there is a lot of crap on the App Store, but at the same time, there would probably be a lot more crap.
There would have been more crap. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, how much crap do you want to deal with, sort of thing?
What percentage?
It sounds
of crap?
stupid, but yeah, we're talking probably double. I mean, and Android is a good case for that, because when we released our game onto Android and iOS at the same time simultaneously, way easier to get onto Android. But the Android store, like in general, is just filled with twice as much crap. Like that's the deal, right?
So you're less likely to get noticed
exactly
on that. Although, does the Google store or the Android store have more marketing help, and is the algorithm a bit better than the iOS store? Because that's another thing.
Not
which
really.
I've heard.
They seem pretty similar. In my opinion. Yeah.
That's another thing that I've heard that doesn't help games developers is the noticeability. Like Apple doesn't want to promote people in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't want to help good things get seen. It seems like it's a waste of their money or time.
I mean, Android have some things in place to circumvent that, which is the like the early access program. They have those, and they have like feature lists and stuff for games, and obviously like the Google store as well. Like the Play Store it's first of all, it's called the Play Store. So it's more focused on games a lot of the time as well. So it's good for games developers. Whereas the App Store for iOS is very much, for apps and productivity and doing things easier and things like that, like quality of life stuff, which is really what it's designed for. So they're very different sort of ecosystems in a way. But yeah, I think it hit and miss. Depends on what you're making and how sort of kid friendly it is. Like if you make like a super serious app which is super clean and sleek, might not even work that great, but if it looks great, then it's probably going to do a lot better on Apple, just because it sort of fits that ecosystem in a weird way, which it sounds stupid and shallow, but at the end of the day, like if it fits within the ecosystem and people are buying it, like who the hell are we to say otherwise? So they have got a little bit of different culture, but not too much.
Yeah. Not too much that you noticed in your experience.
Right. But to be fair, like I have to say that getting apps onto the App Store, like on iOS, is just a colossal pain in the ass. Like there was a lot of hoops you have to run through. The terms and conditions are really long. There's very little minor things that can trip you up, and they just block your app like straight out and you can't even get it in. And there's a lot of that stuff that you've got to handle and deal with. But once you do get it through and you get it in, then you're in an ecosystem where people, like within the Apple sort of ecosystem, understand that anything that comes in is probably of a bit higher quality than
everything that's going on to the Play Store.
Yeah, they know that it's been through a few hoops, and that brings with its own content pros. So it's it really depends on what sort of user you are. Like if you're an Android user, like you don't care like how polished stuff is. You just like if it's effective and you can use it, then that's the important thing. But on iOS, that's not the case. It has to tick all the right boxes and dot all the I's and cross the T's, as it were.
Okay. That's some good stuff there. So we could do like predictions now, I suppose.
For sure.
On the court
for
case.
the trial itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think is going to be the outcomes of the trial? Potential implications?
It depends how it goes, right? I mean, for me, I think the best case scenario that could happen is that if Apple are sort of tagged as a monopoly within the iPhone ecosystem, if that does happen, I think the best thing that could happen is if that the commission boards, which is like the European Commission boards and the North American one, like if they are the ones that have to approve if Apple ever like raise or lower the percentage costs.
Right.
Like I think that would be the most fair thing for everyone if that happened. That's if Apple were actually told that, like, yeah, you have got a monopoly on the iOS store, because unlike Google right now, Google, Android, and all them sort of platforms like Microsoft and all that sort of stuff, they allow you to download apps third party, whereas the iPhones you can't. It's a locked system. So like the worst thing that could probably happen is if iOS like had to open up like Android, because then it would just turn into a mess as well, and security issues and all this sort of stuff. There's so many like muddy little bits to this, but I think it's just the main thing which they're focusing on is the 30%, like the 30% cut. And I think if they can somehow make that a part of regulation to the higher ups within the governments, then I think that would be the best way of doing it. But God knows how this is going to go. This is new territory.
Yeah.
This is going to set precedent for like so many other court cases that are going to come down the line, and potentially new bills that are going to get written in these different countries to sort of pave the way for these digital marketplaces, because this is all new territory. So yeah, it's exciting, it's scary,
it could be great for indie developers. There could be some cool stuff happens off the back of it, which
absolutely
helps that.
Yeah, they could really open the doors for indie developers, I think, as well for this. You know, they could say, okay, like it's a 0% thing for indie developers because you're not making any money. Why should you charge any money?
Yeah,
and things like this. But at the same time, it also opens up the Apple Store to
the floodgate of crap.
So it's
But who's got the money to implement a system to ensure quality? Of all the companies of software around the world, who would you say is really good at making a piece of software that ensures something as a certain quality or a certain standard? But they just are not forced to make a massive amount of profit off the back of it.
Yeah, I mean,
Apple can do it. It's possible.
Yeah, Apple could totally do that as well. And there's other ways around this. They could allow third-party marketplaces like Steam. Like when you open up your PC right now, you've got Steam, you've got the Ubisoft app, you've got the EA Origin app, you've got all these different things like the Microsoft Store and stuff. They're all third parties, but in the PC marketplace, like, would it be so crazy to have Apple regulate third party storefronts like an Epic Store, like a Steam app, which you can just download Steam games within, and Apple get a much smaller cut because Steam are actually managing their own marketplace and stuff like that. There's so many little things that could happen out of this, and to get around that, but Apple just sort of block right now. And
that's one of their arguments at the moment. Apple are making to Epic is that because they own itch.io, that all the content that's associated with itch.io, they're trying to smear with the whole of Epic and all of their software. And so it even came down to the questioning of, so are you responsible for the software that's put on through itch.io, even though there's less sort of quality control? And they were talking about sexualized content, basically, that they couldn't even read out some of the titles of some of the games, that they couldn't even read out in court because of laws of broadcasting profanity. So,
right,
which is great, because then itch.io said we're now going to be changing our like mature content title to like games of unspeakable games or something like that, or like games that are not even spoken of. So they're just like lapping it up, which is great. And it turns out that I think the argument was one in that Epic aren't responsible for software just because they own it. It's on the onus of the individual company to ensure that their policies are adhered to. And so if those policies don't align, because they're separate companies, it doesn't matter. So that seems to be... So the point I'm making is Apple's lawyers, at least, were using that as that's not good. So I think Steam... I would love to see Steam on App Store. I think that'd be awesome. It'd be amazing. That'd be for creativity and for job prospects and for getting money into the lower echelons of the industry. It would be a bit more like of evening the playing field, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think Apple
it
want
all
that,
comes.
and they'll fight it tooth and nail. I don't think they want
Yeah,
it.
it all comes with cons and pros. This is the strange thing about the trial is that, like, yeah, it would be a good thing if Apple opened up a little bit, but at the same time, it'll be a bad thing if they opened up because, like, all the crap will come in, and then they've got security issues. Obviously, like you're talking about devices which have got people's credit cards on, their personal data, and all this sort of stuff. So I understand all of that. And the same, like, there's these two wars that, like, these two battlefields that are coming clashing together right now. And it's just like, okay, but what is the best outcome for both of these companies when you stand back and look at all this? Because either way, like, someone's going to get screwed here. Like, at the end of the day, like, does it screw over the end user? Because that's all I really care about. Like, if I'm the end user and I'm using an iPhone, and if the iPhone App Store opens up, is that a bad thing for me? Is it a good thing for me? Yes or no? And they're the questions which I would have as a consumer. But as the actual companies, we've got to sort of step back and look at this and think, well, it's two massive corporations that are fighting over, like, how much money they can keep. Like, why should we care?
Does it make any impact?
Does it make any difference?
Probably not. Yeah,
not that much, but it does filter down into the smaller guys as well, because what precedent gets set here will filter down to the indie developers. Will settle down to, like, what happens if an indie group of people that have put out like 20 games or whatever, and they've got 20 games in the App Store, but they're not really getting seen. So instead, they decide to make their own storefront, and they put that on the iPhone instead. And then suddenly they explode, and it's great for them, and it works, and like, everyone's happy, and, like, a load of people discover that game's like, oh my god, did you check out that new storefront that's on iOS? All of this stuff could be a good thing for all we know, but we just don't know.
Only time will tell. I can't see Fortnite ever going back on the iPhone.
No.
They're going to be falling out. They're not going to be friends after this, for at least for a while. But I think there'll be some industry changes, and it'll probably be boring and dry. And also I predict that not all the court cases will end the same. Especially, I can see something like, I wouldn't be surprised if Australia would go a different tact to Europe and the UK, and I wouldn't be surprised if something happened in America that wouldn't have happened in the UK or Europe. Yeah,
usually they, like, if something happens in one region, they normally try and cover all the regions with the same sort of system that they put in place for that. Like, I know just this week, I think it was like this weekend actually, it was like during the trial, but the European Commission found that Apple had gone against fair use acts on their sort of music side, like the Apple Music side, saying that they were being too controlling with that, and saying that they were charging too much for certain aspects, and they had really archaic rules that just did not make much sense to the grounds of the law and stuff like this, and all of that sort of stuff. And it's like, okay, if they did that for the music side, like, are they going to do the same thing for the app side? Because it's potentially the similar thing. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't agree or disagree with the music side. I don't know enough about it, if I'm honest. But like, the fact that was ruled in Europe, like, how is that going to rule in this case? Because while this trial is going on in Europe right now, you can sure as hell predict that this same trial is going to play out in all the other regions over the next year. Yeah, I can guarantee. Which means we'll get some more juicy bits and bobs, because every legal system is going to be different, and so this is probably not the end of the juicy info. Absolutely not. So I think it's going to keep coming in, which is good. I mean, it's fascinating, like, this whole trial, because as a developer, like, I sort of knew most of this anyway, not like through insider knowledge or anything. It's just information that you sort of get a feeling of, like, over the years, and now that it's sort of confirmed, it's interesting to see everyone freak out about certain things. Yeah, and you're like, really? Like, and the world is still turning, and the games are still being made, and yeah, it's not affecting the consumers, and I guess it's affecting the shareholders. The shareholders are probably they're scared. All over the place. I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure they're pulling out and pulling in and going in everywhere. And it's like a Tencent bought like 37% of Epic's shares over the last week with the trial going on. Awesome. That happened at the same time. So like, Tencent are a huge they're the biggest games company in the world. Like, most people don't know about them because they're very, like, low-key mobile developer and publisher, but they put in a lot of money into these places. And the fact that they're making moves while this is happening sort of tells you, like, the way that the wind is blowing almost. And if that's the biggest games publisher in the world doing that, then that's sort of like, that's a big message being sent. Yeah. So, but, like, I don't know. I have a feeling, like, to sort of put a lid on this, but like I have a feeling that Apple are going to sort of come out on top on this either way, just purely because of the precedents that are set in the past and how it's sort of like how they're framing it. They're framing it very well, like in terms of saying, you know, this is just them picking a fight for the hell of it. Like there's no actual legal basis in this and all this sort of stuff. So it's kind of, it'll be interesting though.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think Apple will come on top on the court case. Whether or not there will, well, we know that moves have been made because of the 15%, cut to the developer fee. So Apple have already reacted, because that is reaction. You can't deny that. We had that on the cards anyway. Right. So it could just be more of the same. So Apple could win the court case. Epic have a massive fine, but off the back of it, there's some changes that could happen.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a good case scenario as well. I'd be happy for that.
Yeah, all I want is for everyone to just make up, get on, work out the differences, and cut some slack for indie devs. That's all I want.
Yeah, kiss and make up.
Yeah,
kiss. That's all we want.
Get the judge to make them kiss in court, and then we'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, competition is healthy. So, like, the more of that there is, the better. Yeah. So, whether that being within, because like I had a discussion with my wife about this, and she's very much on the side of Apple in that respect, because it's about their platform, and if they built this platform and this ecosystem, then they should have the right to do whatever the hell they want with it. And there's other options out there like Android. So if you don't like Apple's ecosystem as a developer, then you should just be able to just bugger off and go to the other place, which totally makes sense. So I see that argument about it, but at the same time, I also see that iPhone has gotten so big that the discussion is,
when does competition become, when is competition, and when is not even in the same ballpark become the ballpark? Who defines what the ballpark is?
When does iPhone as a product become bigger than mobile phones, sort of thing? And when does it become separate? And when that happens, then does Apple have a monopoly on the product of the iPhone, sort of thing? Which is a weird sort of, inception based like system to look at all of this, but like it's a question that needs to be answered, and when it does get answered, it's gonna set a lot of groundwork for the future. So
one thing we didn't do, which we can now wrap up the show with, is what you've been playing.
Oh my god, yeah, that is a good point. What have I been playing? I'll let you go first on this. Like, what have you been playing? Because you stopped playing Horizon Zero Dawn finally. You've finished it.
I did.
Which is a good thing to get out of your backlog. But what did you shift off onto?
So I posted on Twitter, didn't I? I was choosing between two games. So it was either going to be Uncharted 4 or it was going to be God of War. I downloaded the old God of War. And again, I don't like the fact that they're both called God of War. So the God of War when he's bald.
They're both bald. Like they're always bald.
Oh, wait, no beard. So clean shaven God of War. The original, like the PS3 one.
Young Kratos.
I couldn't get on with it. I couldn't get past the first intro. Like
it's a PS2 game, man.
Poseidon, like it was just quick time button bashing. I'm like, this isn't like the cinematics were amazing. I was really impressed with it. The sound was awesome. But I just couldn't get past it. I kept dying.
You do not need to play the old God of War to play the new one. I would completely skip past it. Play the new God of War. Yeah. It's amazing.
So I played the demo of that because that was free with whatever I've signed up with PlayStation. Okay. And then I did like a survey, which did I get? God of War or Uncharted 4? And then I watched a video about Austin Wintory going over how he did the music for the Pathless video game. Giant squid. And I just was like, no, I'm getting that because that soundtrack sounded amazing, and the interactive sound was just awesome, and the way he approached it I just really resonated with me. And I realized that playing God of War, it was super violent and it was noisy, and like Horizon Zero Dawn is almost, I mean, yes, it has got action and there's violent elements.
It's a very serene, peaceful
but it's a
game,
nice, it's quite a chilled out game, even though it's about the end of the world. And so I didn't want to get into like mean spirited violence. So I downloaded the Pathless and played it. I've played the first couple of bosses on that, and it's just it's so good. I mean, it looked not good. It looked mundane and it looked a bit like meh. But playing it, it just sucked me right in. It was crazy because I've seen the trailer loads of times because it was something that really interested me. But yeah, so the hype I was underhyped for it, and going in, I'm really glad I was underhyped for it because it's actually a really good game.
Pleasantly surprised.
And a lot of it is just the sound, like just sucks you in.
Yeah.
What he's done is just so clever. And then I also downloaded Call of Duty Warzone, and I've been playing with my brother.
Oh, nice. That's one I tried.
Shooter.
I couldn't get into really that much. It was just like I got in there 5 minutes. I was destroyed. I was
the learning curve is steep, I got to say.
It's very steep. Yeah.
I'm playing with some people, so they're like getting my back and stuff. I played for a good few hours, and I didn't kill one person.
I think that's pretty much where I landed on it as well.
But I had fun. It's weird. It's the weirdest thing. Like I got a load of cash, and we came like third on some of the levels, and like we also did terribly in some of the other levels, and everything's confusing. Like my last Modern Warfare 2 was my last Call of Duty game. So I fell out of love with the franchise then. This is a whole new thing. It's not Call of Duty. Not how I remember it.
It's just got the label on it.
It's got the label, but it could
be a different thing.
Fortnite with different guns. But
you could just call it Warzone.
It's so confusing. There's so many modes. There's so many symbols. It's like I don't get it. But I had fun, and so I'll probably do it again. But I'm not going to pay any money. It's free. I'm not going to pay any money for that because it's just confusing. It's confusing. The UI is messy. There's so many modes. There's so many different cache things. You get all the weapons on the floor anyway. So I don't understand about unlocking weapons. Like,
it's for the pink hats, man.
I'm like, should I do a loadout? And they're like, well, no, just pick up a gun. I'm like, okay. And they're like, that's a good gun. Get that one. I'm like, okay. So now I've suddenly got a really good gun. They're like, yeah. I'm like, right, okay. So progression, which is to my mind, like, I guess I'm a traditional gamer now. Like progression comes with time. No, you just pick up guns. And then you
get lucky.
Other modes, you start with just a gun, just a pistol. And I'm like, I thought the game was broken. I said, oh, guys, because I was laying down in a truck. And I was like, when I'm prone, I can't switch weapons. So I think the game's broken. They're like, no, you've only got a pistol. I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, well, how do I get a gun? They're like, you got to pick one up. I'm like, what do you mean pick one up? Like, go look for one. I'm like, how is this a war game? How is this a game about people with guns that drop onto a map with a handgun because all the guns are on the floor? It's like, isn't this supposed to be about war? Warzone. It's not.
I mean, that's literally what like Battle Royale games are based on, which I think that a lot of it was sort of born during the like the Halo 3 era of like playing games where you run around the map and you have to pick up like better new weapons sort of thing. So it feeds into that, but like I get like in terms of like aesthetic, like it doesn't make much sense.
It's new for me. I feel very out of depth.
I played Call of Duty World War II, and just like the thing that got me annoyed about that game more than anything is like you'd be walking around like, okay, I got my Thompson like in my like World War II gear and stuff, and it looks really realistic, it looks great, and you finally start the map, and then like the first guy you run into is some kid that's like bought the DLCs or whatever, and he's got a fucking pink submachine gun with a pink helmet, purple vest and stuff. I'm like, it just completely kills like everything. Like it kills the fantasy of like playing in World War II sort of Call of Duty game. Yeah. And like that drives me around the bend, man. Like I wish there was a button to turn that off, but it would completely, it'd ruin the whole reason to actually buy anything. So
I was thinking it's like one of the best Call of Duties is Call of Duty 3. It was just multiplayer was just kind of in its infancy, and it was World War II setting. And it was Gary Oldman doing the voiceover, and it's like you play the Russians.
Oh, that was Call of Duty World at War.
World at War, sorry. Oh, that was World at War. Sorry, no, you're right. World at War.
Yeah.
When you play on the Russian front and play on the German side, and that was an awesome game. I was like, that was a great game. There would be no pink hats in that game.
Yeah, no, you're right. I miss World at War. It's one of my favorite Call of Duties to play anyway. Like it was, I put 2 years into that game with my friends and LAN parties and stuff. But yeah, great game.
So yes, I'm a bit disillusioned. So I'm eager to see what the new World War II Call of Duty game is. And is it going to be World War II? Is it going to be pink hats? Who knows?
Both. It will be both. I guarantee it. Unfortunately, but the last Call of Duty I played was Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which is not the last one Cold War that came out, but the one before that.
Yeah,
absolutely loved it. Like I thought the campaign was probably one of the best in Call of Duties in years. I think like it's well worth looking into that one. So I would check that out. If you're just into the campaign and playing pretty straightforward like multiplayer, then that's a good one to get into.
Okay. So yes, that
Cool.
I guess wraps up the podcast.
Indeed.
Should I do a weird newsy outro?
Sure.
Let's do it. Okay.
You should.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this special epic Apple court case episode of the Polygon Forest podcast. I have been Chris Jarvis, joined with you by the Ubisoft concept artist Vin Hill. If you wanted to reach us via social media, you can find me on Twitter at Acrylic Pixel. And Vin, how can we get hold of you if we need to?
You can find me on Twitter. I am at Hillfort Games. I sometimes post some of my concept art on there, as well as some indie games development stuff. So if you're into that, then please give us a follow and you shall see some of it.
Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. If you like this new format, should we keep it going? Please don't say yes, because this has been a bit of a pain in the ass. And we'll see you next time.
That's all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Epic Games and Apple are at a trial over alleged antitrust practices by the Apple iPhone maker. Wait, no, let's try that again. On tonight's...
This will be at the end,
Will be at
so
the
that's
end.
the best part.
Okay.